So this is footage that I took when I visited Cartoon Network Studios in Burbank, California. I've been to Burbank a lot, and there were many occasions where I've walked past this building and thought to myself, I'm gonna go in one day and check it out. But I never did. I always procrastinated, and then just the other day, I learned that Cartoon Network Studios was shutting down after 23 years of service, and will now be merging with Warner Brothers Animation. Warner Brothers said this decision was made as part of its strategic alignment, citing an effort to reduce business expenses. Now, the Cartoon Network channel is not going anywhere for now, but the building is, which has since become an iconic landmark for many Southern Californians. So we decided to finally commit and pay our first and last respects to what was once the powerhouse of our childhoods. Unfortunately, we couldn't go inside. It was all boarded up. We tried very inconspicuously. All right, let's see if they're opened. No. But I'm glad we at least got to see the outside of it before they inevitably tear it all down. It is the end of an era. And when you really think about it, all of this is just a byproduct of something we've all seen coming for the past 10 years or so. The slow disappearance of cable television. The other day, I put together a poll, just for fun, to see how many of you still watch cable, and a staggering 79% said no, they didn't. But it's not just the questionably reliable YouTube polls talking. According to a study from nscreenmedia.com, US households with cable, satellite, or telco TV went from 100 million in 2014 down to 60 million in 2023. That's a 40% drop, and the lowest it's been since the 1980s. I mean, this is no surprise because of streaming. The privilege of being able to choose what you want, whenever you want, without any ads, and at a much more affordable price. A whole new movement known as cord cutting is now on the rise. But I would argue that this is both a blessing and a curse. There's no denouncing the incredible convenience and flexibility of on-demand content, but it does lack that very unique autonomy that its predecessors had. That feeling of just turning on the TV, flipping through the channels, not having to give it any thought, especially after a long day of work or school, and then just eventually discovering something. And with that comes that feeling of togetherness, watching a live broadcast with thousands of other people, something that, by the nature of how cable TV is designed, has really yet to be replicated. And now we are seeing the aftereffects of that. So how did cable TV as an art form start? What went wrong? And how do we go back? Not long ago, Professor of Physics at Munich University, Dr. Arthur Korn, had a brilliant idea. We've already mastered the art of sending messages across the world through telegraph, but what if we could send something else, like images? After endless hours of putting together this contraption, Korn successfully sent this image of himself by wire to Nuremberg, 90 miles away. He called his invention television. But of course, this was 1907. This machine bared little resemblance to the entertainment boxes we've all grown to love today and just didn't generate much excitement. Yeah, a couple prototypes and some huge breakthroughs would show up here and there, but the timing was just not right. People just weren't ready for television. But everything would change in 1948, when 3 broadcast towers were built in Pennsylvania, Oregon, and Arkansas, giving remote areas television access for the very first time. Because of this, combined with the first hit television shows and a booming economy, television blew up. But funnily enough, because of the nature of its design, only live broadcasting was possible. But there was surprisingly a super easy solution for this. Put all the pre-recorded programs on a projection screen and just point the camera at it. This was basically the 50s equivalent of someone recording their TV screen with their phone and uploading it to YouTube. It was a blurry, muffled mess. Thankfully, videotape would eventually come in and save the day, but still, this didn't stop people. From sitcoms, presidential debates, and variety shows, television was now a cultural phenomenon.
Hey, Dad, what did people do before they had television?
Well, they went to the theater, to libraries, museums.
Oh, they just goofed around, huh?
But there was one problem. There were only like 4 channels, and one of them immediately went out of business. And there was a reason for this. Television, in the 50s, was technologically almost identical to radio. Rather than radio waves being converted into sound, they were converted into sound and video. So each TV channel was on its own separate frequency, and these were public airwaves, meaning it was regulated by the FCC. And the FCC didn't want too many of these frequencies being used, so they put a legal limit how many could be used. And these channels also had to follow FCC guidelines, no swearing or anything like that.
Fuck, I don't have a line.
This becomes important later. Only having 3 channels meant limited material, which meant limited programming. Yes, TV was only on at certain times of the day. When it wasn't on, it just played the national anthem. So while this new TV technology certainly wasn't going anywhere, it still needed a lot of time to grow. And it needed to explore as many art mediums as possible to ensure its success. Sitcoms, game shows, soap operas. Music? In the mid-1950s, one program in particular would prove insanely consequential. It would be the seed that was planted and would grow into what would become cable television. I haven't had soda in so long. This is a real autograph from Dick Clark, by the way. Yes, that's really him. A lot of people complain about my videos being too long, so this should be fun. So, what was American Bandstand, or Bandstand for short? Well, it was a TV program hosted by Dick Clark, where teenagers would dance to the latest songs, whatever was trending on the Billboard charts at the time. Sometimes even the artists themselves would show up and lip-sync the performance. It was basically TRL in the 1950s. Do you guys even know what TRL is? A lot of younger people watch me. It was TikTok in the 1950s. The show was actually quite forward-thinking for the time, even showcasing many musicians of color during a time where segregation in the United States was still rampant. Things unfortunately weren't perfect in that regard, but it still did bring some representation which would help contribute to civil rights. So what does this have to do with cable? Well, Bandstand essentially maximized the economic potential of a previously unexplored and somewhat new market: teenagers. Aside from the housewife, they're at home watching TV more than anyone else. They're old enough to have their own jobs and make their own money, but they're still young enough to be very impressionable and end up becoming loyal customers even well into adulthood. Youth-oriented programming. If you're wondering why the music industry specifically caters to young people so much, I did an entire video on that, which you can find here. Go up there. So Bandstand was a cash cow for both the music and the TV industry. And then in the 1960s, the British invasion happens, and it influences all American media.
How many of you right now are tired of the Beatles? Uh-oh.
Now there are British bands performing on American Bandstand. It is a cultural explosion and becomes one of the driving factors of the counterculture movement. Hippies become a thing. And what are hippies? They are this radically left-wing group that rejects all the idealism of the 50s. Screw the government, screw their rules, do whatever you want as long as it's not hurting anybody. Hippies did not represent the majority of people in the world, but they were powerful enough to alter the zeitgeist of the time, especially as the world was entering into the 1970s. And it's at this time where the Vietnam War becomes the first televised war, showcasing the true horror and violence of military combat. With this new attitude towards being real, people are now desensitized and start revisiting the ridiculous rules put forward by the FCC. Keep in mind, TV at the time is free to air, meaning they are on public airwaves just like radio, and the FCC can regulate what is allowed on there. It is not a violation of free speech because they aren't restricting what is being said, just how it is being said. You can say, "Well, I strongly disagree with President Eisenhower's recent decisions in his presidency. What do you have to say for yourself, Ike?" You can't say, "President Eisenhower, go f*** yourself. Also, I'm a communist." But that didn't matter. Some people thought, that's stupid. Why can't I say it that way? In 1972, George Carlin releases his album, Class Clown, which included his segment called The 7 Words You Can't Say on Television. And given recent events, these just so happen to also be the 7 words you can't say on YouTube. Zing!
I mean, there are a lot of words you can say whenever you want, you know? Pneumonia! Nobody gives you a lot of... But there are some words that you can go to jail for. Cursing, cussing, swearing, and all I could think of was...
Just imagine witnessing this, uncensored, on a live broadcast in 1972. This story was huge. It was so controversial, it even led to a freaking Supreme Court case. Carlin was not the only one who felt this way either. Instead, the TV industry started popularizing a unique idea. What if instead of watching TV through the public airwaves, you pay a subscription service to get access to frequencies only visible through the use of a coaxial cable? But these are private frequencies. The FCC doesn't have nearly as much control of them. So not only do you get access to less restricted content, you get access to more content, as more channels are allowed through this cable. That very same year, the channel Home Box Office is launched, or HBO for short. The 70s would be the era of new TV channels popping up on these growing cable services. Now, network TV is still in the lead, but this competition is slowly growing, and it is apparent with the attitude of the time that things are changing. Bandstand is now in stiff competition with Soul Train, but youth-oriented programming is still in vogue. But this could be pushed even further. What if instead of just marketing to teenagers, we marketed to kids? In 1977, the very first ever kids channel was launched, available on the cable service Cube in Columbus, Ohio. The channel was called the Pinwheel Network, which aired the kids show of the same name, quite similar to Sesame Street. But 2 years later, the channel finally expanded nationally, rebranding its name to Nickelodeon. Now, there is some great discourse on when cable TV officially started. Many historians argue it was in 1948 when CATV provided TV access to people in remote areas for a subscription fee. But I disagree. This may be the technological definition, but the attitude, the spirit of cable TV that we understand and recognize today did kind of show up overnight. August 1st, 1981.
We have made it.
Ladies and gentlemen, rock and roll.
There quite literally could not be a more fitting and poetic representation of the attitude people had towards cable TV than what MTV did in the first 5 minutes of its history. Say goodbye to the old ways of television broadcast, which was basically just an extension of radio with FCC guidelines and all. Cable TV was its own private realm, where the government couldn't get its slimy hands on it. Radio TV was over. Video TV was the future. So what was the very first music video that MTV showed? Things would just never be the same after this. This may just be one of the most important broadcasts in history, the distinct start and end of 2 eras. Coincidentally, MTV aired more music in its first 2 hours than it has in the past 20 years. Zing, zing! I'm here till Tuesday. MTV was a cultural marvel unlike any other.
I want my MTV.
I want my MTV.
I want my MTV.
The legacy acts like that of Bandstand just could not keep up. and slowly faded into the distant past. This was the new normal. Cable as a lifestyle was snowballing. It was an explosion of color in an otherwise dull TV world. Its free-spirited, almost careless convictions would even start to infiltrate the network channels.
Never has there been a more exciting time to be alive. A time of rousing wonder and heroic achievement. As they said in the film Back to the Future, where we're going, we don't need roads.
Bend your knees and stick out your pelvis. I'm telling you, baby, it's better than Elvis.
You hear me? Can you see this in the back row?
From now on, Al Bundy is going to live with a little bit of dignity.
I just don't know.
Oh, Jessie, say, oh, you cried.
So the 25th Space Shuttle mission is now on the way after
1 minute 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
By 1990, 60% of American households had some kind of cable or satellite television. There were now over 200 channels, each with their own unique purpose. They each had their own personality, own expectations, own fan bases. It was a whole other world, and everyone stopped and stared.
Drop the screw in the tuna! How you people doing out there? All right, party!
I am nature's greatest miracle!
This is your brain on drugs.
Any questions?
Susan, I'm gay.
I was wondering if I might trouble you for a cup of strong black coffee.
O.J. Simpson demonstrated how to stab two people at the same time.
Get out of here! You're fired! You're never gonna serve justice again!
In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Hi there. This would have been the perfect setup for the MTV segment. Opportunities missed. Before we continue the video, I need to let you know about today's sponsor, me. Yeah, I'm sponsoring this video. My dear friends, Bob Dylan is going electric. I have started a Patreon. Now, living in LA is expensive, and in order to... That is a horrible way to start a Patreon ad. Let me try that again. Shockingly, I've had some viewers ask me to start a Patreon, and I'm not going to say no to more money. So as of right now, my Patreon and YouTube memberships tab is launched and ready to go. On there, you can find additional channel content, including membership exclusive posts, video blogs, live streams, behind the scenes content, your name credited at the end of videos, all kinds of stuff. The money that is pledged will significantly help in improving the videos on my channel. And it's only a matter of time before AI takes over and destroys my entire business. So you can check it out over at patreon.com/nationsquid, and channel memberships information can be found by just clicking the join button next to my name on YouTube. Of course, this is all completely optional, but it is greatly appreciated and really does go a long way. And if you don't do it, I will tell on you. Again, patreon.com/nationsquid. I have the link in the description, or click join next to my name on YouTube. That is it for now. Thank you all for your support, and back to the video. By the end of the 90s, cable TV was at its peak. However, there were some deeply rooted things going on which would signify that this was the beginning of the end. Many of the cable companies saw how hot their product was, and they wanted to test its limits. Over the decade, the price of the monthly subscription just kept going up. How much are customers willing to pay? By 2005, the price of cable had grown 3 times higher than inflation. And it's at this time where you see the numbers slowly start to dip back down. But the pricing wasn't the only issue. There was another factor at play: the internet. That very same year, something very special would happen.
All right, so here we are in front of the elephants.
The effect that YouTube had on the world obviously cannot be understated. Videos were now more accessible and easier to post online than it had ever been, and arguably even easier than it is now. And that part is important because that specifically is what enabled people to see the internet as both the technological and social utility that it is. You see, the internet was still too young for the real world to take it seriously from a legal standpoint. Of course, I am talking about copyright infringement. During the first 2 years of YouTube, you could find entire movies, TV shows, and albums uploaded to the site. This was before their community guidelines were enforced, before any major precedents of online copyright law, except for maybe Napster. Just about anything you could think of was on there. I would know because I got to watch the entirety of Donnie Darko. Don't judge me, alright? We all have our fixes. Having this seemingly endless repository of entertainment media at your fingertips showed the true capabilities of the internet. And it wasn't even just copyrighted content. Original filmmakers started using YouTube as their own medium of expression, giving tons of previously unheard talents a platform. Why spend all this money on TV when I can just watch anything I want online for free? Now, cable did not crash overnight. It was slow and painful, and the continuous updating of online copyright law and the restriction of what can be posted online certainly prolonged its presence. Despite experiencing slight dips at the start of the decade, cable's market share was still quite strong. In fact, the 2000s are often regarded as the second golden age of television, with the network still providing incredibly successful movies and shows.
Advertising is based on one thing: happiness.
You want to cook crystal meth? You and me.
That's right. Either that, or I turn you in.
Your absence has already been noted.
The boy means nothing to me. Oh, I can't stand the wailing of women.
One word, and I hit you again.
I'm telling Mother.
Having said that, the growing medium of on-demand video, thanks to the internet, was having its hold on the industry. In January of 2007, an online DVD rental company called Netflix made the revolutionary decision to start hosting their media online, much like YouTube, for a monthly fee. And without commercials? Hollywood writers were already used to getting residuals from DVDs and VHS sales, and when the Writers Guild of America renewed their contracts with the film studios, they noticed that the residual rates for this new technology were very low, insultingly low. When the studios refused to compromise, these writers just said, okay then, we're just not gonna work. At all. The 2007 writer's strike was the turning point for cable. In fact, several successful TV shows were permanently affected and even outright canceled because of the strike. It not only significantly affected the amount of beautiful art that was coming out of the TV world, but it also was an indicator that things were changing. But the writer's strike also did something that would change the direction of cable forever, and not in a good way. The homogenization of TV channels. As we discussed earlier, a big reason cable was so successful in the first place was because there was a huge selection of channels, each with their own personality. MTV was for music, the History Channel was for history, and so on. The YouTube channel Captain Midnight made a fantastic video covering this phenomenon, and I highly suggest you check it out, so I will just give you the gist. In the 90s, MTV came up with an idea. What if instead of just showing music or airing fictional entertainment, we just documented the real world? Hell, we'll even call it The Real World, a show documenting young adults trying to accustom to city life. You didn't need to spend money on writers or specially trained actors because it was all real. It was a huge success for MTV, and they no longer needed to rely on music videos to stay relevant. So they didn't. That's why people always joke about how MTV doesn't air music anymore. Seeing the success of The Real World, other channels wanted to emulate it, hoping to reduce their costs and maximize their revenue. So, throughout the 2000s, you see the rise of reality TV. And when the writer's strike happened, well, you don't need writers for reality TV, so let's just focus on that. And so, the Learning Channel went from learning to, well, reality TV. And the History Channel went from history to reality TV. And the Discovery Channel went from documentaries to, you get the point. And as the 2010s came around, people started to realize that instead of paying $60 a month for cable to watch what was mostly, let's be honest, crappy reality TV content, they could just spend $9 a month on Netflix and watch whatever they want, whenever they want, ad-free. But what about live TV? You couldn't exactly watch the Super Bowl on Netflix, or the Oscars, The Tonight Show. Oh yeah, The Tonight Show. Technically not live, but it is explicitly defined by its time slot. It airs at night. In an effort to compete with the Ed Sullivan Show, NBC started The Tonight Show with Steve Allen, which then went to Jack Paar, and then saw immense popularity with Johnny Carson in 1962. Carson would host The Tonight Show for 30 years until handing it over to Jay Leno in 1992. And so, it became a sort of ritual to pass the torch onto the next host after 30 years of service. And so, in 2009, Jay Leno hands it over to Conan O'Brien, becoming the next host for The Tonight Show. But surprisingly, Conan just isn't attracting as many people as NBC thought he would. So in 2010, something insane happens. Leno changes his mind. He wants the show back, and NBC wants him back. So they decide to give Leno his own show and ask Conan to push The Tonight Show back. After Conan's famous response, "I'm not moving The Tonight Show to tomorrow," a full-on war broke out.
And I just want to say to the kids out there watching, you can do anything you want in life. Yeah, unless Jay Leno wants to do it too.
I was a fan of both Conan O'Brien and Jay Leno at the time. I watched this whole thing happen live, and wow. Wow.
Happy birthday to Jay Leno, 61 years old today. Happy birthday, Jay. This is an interesting point. Jay cut the cake with the same knife he stuck in Conan's back.
Many people who weren't even Conan fans felt that NBC and Leno really betrayed him. It got really ugly.
It's from Jay Leno. Hope stand-up's going well. Haha, see, it's not so hard after all. Anyone can do it. What's it like to have a soul? I don't even know what he's...
And the way it ended was even crazier. Conan quits, leaves NBC after nearly 30 years, moves over to TBS, and Leno comes back to The Tonight Show. The entire situation was just so unfortunate and created a ton of vitriol. For many, NBC and Leno just left a very bad taste in their mouth, and the show's reputation never really recovered. Now, when Jimmy Fallon took over in 2014, his ratings were considerably better than Conan's, but things were still at a great decline and would only continue to go down from there. With streaming being a way cheaper alternative and much more hands-on, with YouTube existing, with all the channels becoming more or less the same, and with the whole Tonight Show fiasco, was there really a reason to keep cable anymore? A whole movement goes in full force: cord cutting. But then cable encounters one last chance to save face with the launch of an app called Aereo. Much like streaming, for just $8 a month, you could have the 4 main commercial TV channels live streamed to your phone, broadcast television in the palm of your hand. And very soon after, all these channels sued Aereo for copyright infringement, arguing that they did not have the proper licensing to broadcast their content. And it's in this respect that cable TV did in fact die overnight, June 22nd, 2014, when the Supreme Court decided in favor of the broadcasting companies, and Aereo was subsequently shut down. But wait, this is network television. What does this have to do with cable? Well, as we've discussed, at its peak, cable was in nearly all American households, with these cable packages including the free-to-air broadcast channels, so they just became synonymous with cable socially as a concept. It became cable, by association. And this court case pretty much set a legal precedent that live TV and the internet just couldn't really coexist. Had things turned out differently, who knows, cable channels could have very well entered the picture. But that didn't happen. So the death of Aereo kind of was the final nail in the coffin. And as time went on, the TV channels began to suffer and realize the mistake they made. If they couldn't compete with Netflix, they needed to become it. Streaming services began popping up left and right, removing their content from Netflix and exclusively putting it on their own services for a monthly fee. And this includes multiple plans, with the cheapest one usually having ads. And now we're here. So in terms of price, technical lockdowns, and multiple different services to choose from, streaming has brought cable to the internet, just without the charm. Yes, streaming is more convenient, but I can't help but feel like it's missing something. In a weird way, and this is the only way I know how to describe it, watching something on a streaming service feels lonelier than watching it on cable. And I soon learned it wasn't just me with this feeling either. And for a long time, I was trying to figure out what that was. And then I finally did, and it all started to make sense. Streaming, and the internet in general, have created something called media bubbles. There is a short story from E.M. Forster called The Machine Stops. It takes place in a post-apocalyptic world where the Earth is no longer livable. Instead, people live beneath the surface, with each person living in their own hexagonal-shaped room, much like a beehive. These rooms are all controlled by an all-powerful machine that fulfills every need of each person: necessities, pleasure, spiritual, everything, effectively creating a room that is unique to them. So naturally, they don't feel the need to ever leave their pods. They have everything. But over time, people, one by one, slowly start to feel this sort of disconnect, and they get curious about what exists out in the real world. This story was written in 1909, and it is incredible. And you could say it kind of predicted the internet and what we are experiencing with cable right now, because the internet is a seemingly infinite repository of information which fulfills every need: necessities, pleasure, and spiritual. And this includes media entertainment. It is our machine. We are all in our own little pods, each of them unique to us and what we like. Maybe your little brother watches Minecraft videos on YouTube. Your grandpa watches Fox News, each in their own bubble. And then comes an even more unique problem. There is so much content to choose from, it can get overwhelming. This is known as choice paralysis, the feeling that there is so much out there, yet there's nothing at the same time. And this feeling extends to not just what you watch, but how you watch. Streaming has given us the luxury of releasing an entire season of a show all in one day, what we call binge watching. Whereas on cable, you typically had to wait once a week for a new episode to come out. But much like when you're eating a meal, is it better to devour the whole thing in one bite? Or to take it one bite at a time and really savor the experience? Taking everything all in too fast can make things very conflicting. You're full, yet you're still starving. It's that exact feeling you get when you're scrolling through hundreds of titles on Netflix, yet you still feel like there's nothing to watch. You're so used to the content within your bubble that anything else feels foreign, a little intimidating, much like the people unwilling to leave their hexagonal rooms to explore Earth. They fear the unknown.
Hey, you joined at the perfect time. Jeez.
Good. Yay. Awesome. I'm so excited.
Yeah, I'm very excited too. I have everything plugged into one outlet right now, so...
Oh, shit. Got one outlet or nothing.
This is my friend Nona. I recently met up with her for coffee, and the topic of network TV and cable came up, and she provided such interesting insight on the whole subject, I just had to invite her on for this video.
Actually, first off, introduce yourself.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Nona. I studied communications and gender studies and African American studies at Loyola Marymount University university. I just graduated a few months ago, and I'm currently a community organizer. So my job is to work with people and understand human interactions to move towards a goal of creating justice. I do think that television, because of its role in society, can find small ways of, making the lives of people important. I mean, it's a way that people can connect. We'll bring up kind of iconic TV shows sometimes. God forbid we mention, The Cosby Show. I know it's like so done now, but at the time it was revolutionary, to have.
Oh yeah, I grew up with The Cosby Show too, so.
But, it was like one of those shows that really created something for Black families. And I organized in a lot of Black communities who were watching cable TV when The Cosby Show came out. So with things like that, of course, television gets mentioned. It's a key part of our life,
Would you say that the conversations you have about television, are they mostly about shows from your childhood or even like more recent stuff too?
Mainly shows from childhood, because now people don't really watch cable the way that they used to. And I do feel that there's a little bit of an age gap disconnect where shows that older people watch aren't necessarily the shows that a lot of people in my generation, Gen Z, watch. So
that basically ties into my next question is, what are some of your favorite memories of cable?
I used to love, my mom watched the MTV network where it was just music videos playing literally 24/7. And I remember just after school and going to my grandma's house and my mom watching that on the main TV. And we used to be so annoyed because we were like, we want to watch TV shows. But now I go on YouTube and half the time all I watch are either music videos or like award show performances. And so that's super endearing to me to, walk into my grandma's living room and see my mom watching MTV music videos, and how I kind of do the same thing now, just like on a different platform. So,
obviously, of course, you can watch live television through streaming thanks to platforms such as Pluto, or, even Peacock has a live section where you can watch sports and all that. Do you think this serves as a full replacement for cable and network television? Does it replicate that charm in the same way?
Definitely not, because there's still, I feel like, streaming platforms first and foremost, You don't go on Peacock, at least I don't, with the intention of watching live TV. I go on it to watch The Office or, shows like that. So I don't think that anything really has had the capacity to replicate cable. I think that the reason why cable is not what it used to be is because especially American society has just changed so much, like we have 2-parent households, we live really busy lives. And with, the prominence of social media, I don't think that we live in a time anymore that's conducive to the world that cable needed.
What do you miss the most about cable?
So I just miss the excitement that would bring in the community and the imagination. It was just so much fun. You don't even realize how fun and special it is until you don't have it anymore.
Well, I really had the pleasure of talking to you. You provided so much insight for this, and I want to thank you again for coming along.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to see it to come out.
Yeah, you'll be the first to know when it comes out.
Oh, thanks. Awesome.
For a significant portion of my childhood, YouTube didn't even exist. Instead, we watched Nickelodeon, Cartoon Fridays, Saturday Night Live, things that all aired something specific at a specific time and day. So we all watched the same thing at the same time. We were all together. And that sense of togetherness is possible because of that autonomy that cable TV provides. Everyone knows where they were the night Seinfeld ended. For some streaming service show, haven't had a chance to watch it yet. I'll probably get to it eventually. You didn't have to choose what you wanted to watch. The TV channels did all the choosing for you. Sometimes you just want to come home, turn on the TV, and not have to think about it. And just maybe, through doing that, you'll discover something, and your family will come on the journey with you. There is a scene from the end of Mad Men that really stood out to me, and it was the first thing I thought of as I was piecing this all together. Peggy Olson is a creative executive for an advertising agency in the 1960s. She has to create a great ad campaign for a restaurant called Burger Chef. But there's one problem. She's presenting this the day after the Apollo 11 moon landing. Everyone is so awestruck by this event that any idea she pitches is going to sound mediocre at best.
No, Don, I have to talk to people who just touched the face of God about hamburgers.
Now, me bringing this up probably sounds like a complete non sequitur, but the way Peggy ties everything together communicates the exact same theme that applies to the art of cable. In the 60s, you didn't have media bubbles, but cultural bubbles. There was even a term for this called the generation gap. The idea that parents were so detached from their children in terms of culture and politics, a concept which still exists today. But when the moon landing happened, none of that mattered because everyone was together doing the same thing.
This is the home your customers really live in. This is your dinner table. Dad likes Sinatra, son likes the Rolling Stones. The TV's always on. Vietnam playing in the background. And you're starving. And not just for dinner. What if there was another table where everybody gets what they want? And there's no laundry, no telephone, and no TV. And we can have the connection that we're hungry for. There may be chaos at home, but there's family supper at Burger Chef.
Family supper at Burger Chef. That feeling you had with your family when you watched man land on the moon? Well, you can have that exact same feeling when you eat at Burger Chef, because we're all here to do one thing and nothing else. One of my favorite feel-good family sitcoms is Bewitched. And the only reason I like it so much is because one day I came home and saw my dad watching it on TV. He grew up in the 60s, so it was kind of a nostalgia trip for him, and I decided to join him. We had so much fun, and eventually it just became a routine for us to come home every night and watch a couple episodes of Bewitched. I would come home from a stressful day at school. Dad would come home from drama at work. But as soon as we walked through that door and sat on that couch, nothing else mattered for the next hour. My father is no longer with us, and that is one of my last memories I have with him. With cable TV, the show picks you, not the other way around. I would not have ever cared for Bewitched or sought it out on a streaming service had I not walked in on it already playing on the TV. I never had to make a choice, and that choice has created a permanent, all-powerful connection with my father. It is my family supper at Burger Chef. And that's not at all to say that this type of bonding cannot exist with streaming. It certainly has before. But because streaming is so asynchronous by design, a lot of that connection is just lost. And that is even further reinforced by the fact that there's just not that many people that watch cable anymore. All the famous live events we've grown to love are now accessed through other means. And we're even seeing the consequences of that right now. The 2023 writers and actors strikes are a direct response from the shift to streaming. Of course, this includes other big issues such as the excessive use of AI in lieu of paying people, but this is, in many respects, a continuation of what happened in 2007. A new broadcasting medium such as streaming means a new way of paying people, which means a new opportunity for corporations to take advantage of that. And that's exactly what's happening. History is rhyming. Streaming has done to cable what cable did to broadcast television. And yes, let's emphasize that all these things still do exist and people still use them, but it has greatly diminished. What ruined cable was greed. Prices went up, content was homogenized to reduce costs and effort, and then all that poured directly into the lives of those who helped make this entertainment possible. It could have very well adapted to the internet, but they just didn't let that happen. And now the culture has shifted. Even if something like Aereo were to come back, I think this culture has changed too much for it to have the same impact. Because cable wasn't just a technology, it was a lifestyle, one which is pretty much extinct in the mainstream space. Video killed the radio star, but radio came back with a cold vengeance. We are in the next evolutionary step of media entertainment, And the current and former mediums certainly had their own advantages and disadvantages. It isn't better or worse, it's just new, and things have changed to the point where we can look back and wonder. We kind of took cable for granted the same way I took the Cartoon Network building for granted. And now it's kind of too late to appreciate it in the same way. So to Cartoon Network Studios, thanks for the memories, and I hope you use this next step to create many more.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and click the notification bell so that you never miss a future video.